So what we're doing tonight is an overview of the whole book. And you saw how big the book is, right? So obviously in 2 hours, I'm not going to be able to get anywhere close to the depth, maybe a little lower than that. Could you do like one thing lower? I'm not going to be able to get into the same depth that we get to into the book. So I'm really just going to skim the surface. So if you feel that I'm not going deeply enough, you're right. I have had people, just by going through this presentation, tonight we have almost 2 hours, I have taught this in as little as 45 minutes, speaking faster than I'm speaking now. And for example, I taught it at Lloyd's Bank in London in 45 minutes to about 30 professional bankers. And right after that, 3 of them contacted me and said, I know what I need to fix in my career. So it's quite possible that just seeing this will give some of you enough guidance, certainly seeing this and getting the book, but those of you who want to go deeper, we are having this in-depth program at the GEV. I've never been there before. I've been hearing how amazing it is for a long time, so I'm hoping to discover that for myself. And any of you who want to, how many of you have been there before to GEV? Oh my goodness. Is it as wonderful as everybody says? All right, well maybe I'll get to meet some of you there. Okay. So if you want more information, for example, we're coming out with the book in ebook format, we're coming out with it in audiobook format. I'm also working on, with devotees from Bhaktivedanta College in Radhadesh, a full online course. So if you want information about any of that, please get on our mailing list. We will not send you an immediate confirmation, we've received your email, but you will be on our list, okay? Or if you just want to capture the QR code, that'll do it too. I'd like you to imagine that your daily life has gradually come to include all the practices and activities you've always dreamed of, that you love the work you're doing, you love what you're producing, and how you're making a meaningful contribution, that your work is bringing you the kinds of prosperity that truly enrich you and that you joyfully share with others. I'd like you now to imagine that the world was full of people having this type of experience. What a difference that would make. Suppose we woke up tomorrow and that was the one change in the world. Would that be significant? So we're going to look at this in 4 areas: identifying our ideal career field and prosperity type, and that's what most people are primarily interested in. Who am I? What is my nature? That's not the beginning, middle, and end of the story, though, because doing that alone, just being the best expression of yourself and being in the right place, isn't enough to give us what we crave. So we go one step further to learn the secrets of making our work deeply meaningful. And even that isn't enough. We take one step beyond to progress toward Dharmic mastery, and then we will also look at the whole system for peace and prosperity. Srila Prabhupada used this phrase, peace and prosperity, 195 times in his lectures and books. Now, these 4 areas encompass 9 principles of career dharma. And would you all be willing to read this with me? Yeah? Connecting our nature with our livelihood, advancing through life while nourishing our nature, extending our prosperity to others, ethical and meaningful work of value, delight in cherishing our prosperity and field of work, having celebrations of the sacred in our life and work, above the shades of ego, maintaining societal balance, cooperation between the fields and competition within the fields, and all-inclusive sustainable prosperity. And I'm so happy about this. When you put them all together, they spell career Dharma. That wasn't easy, by the way. Okay. So we're going to start with identifying our prosperity type and career field. And the first principle is connecting our nature with our livelihood. So a lot of times people think of career and prosperity only in terms of money. I want to get the job where I will earn as much money as possible. So I'd like to ask you all a question. Have you ever met someone or heard of somebody or read about somebody who had a lot of money but a poor life? How many who've ever read about somebody, heard about somebody, or met somebody who had a poor life with a lot of money? Some of you like never read the news? Yeah? You've never heard of such a person? No? Seriously? Okay, let's think. Have you ever heard of a very rich person who's gone through like 3 divorces and is addicted to drugs? Does that sound like a rich life? Okay, so I'm going to ask the question again. How many of you know of a person who has a lot of money but a poor life? At least one person. Have you ever heard of at least one person? Some of you really are not convinced that such a person exists on the planet. All right. Have you ever heard of or met anyone who doesn't have much money but has a rich life? Have you ever met any of that kind of? I always get more hands for that one, which is interesting. But seriously, all you have to do is read any headline any day in any newspaper, and you will hear about somebody who has a lot of money and their life is a mess. They're not happy. Yeah? You know, they have €1 million in the bank and they commit suicide. So why is it that we have this idea that a rich life and money are the same? They're not, are they? I mean, look, everybody needs money. Everybody wants money. I need money. I have to buy shoes. And it's not that we could live without money, but just having money is not the only indicator of whether or not we have a rich, prosperous life. And when we're looking for what kind of career we should have, the Shastra tells us that we should look at 6 types of prosperity. So this is one of the classes I will be giving in depth in GEV, so I will be spending a whole 2 hours just on this concept, which is again 1 chapter in our book. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this now, but just a little looking at it. So these are the 6 types of prosperity, and we're going to do a little bit of investigation as to how important each of these are for us to have a prosperous life. And I think as we go through them, you'll see that each of us have 1, 2, maybe 3 that are really essential for us in order to feel prosperity in our life. All right, the first is Aishvarya. What Sanskrit word does Aishvarya come from? Ishwar, yes, which means controller. Yes. So this is the prosperity type of leading others. We're talking here about positional leadership. We're not talking here about inspirational leadership or charismatic leadership, where you're a project manager, you're a boss, you're a foreman, you have some kind of situation where you're leading, guiding, and engaging others, where you're getting joy from coordinating the activities of a lot of people according to their talents and abilities. Just like I know of one devotee in Europe who works in a healthcare field, and she says that she's basically stopped marketing and selling their healthcare products. She's basically engaged in engaging and leading others. And she's finding so much joy in that, helping others to become successful and work together as a team. I said, how many people are you supervising? She said, 50,000. Sometimes we devotees think that this prosperity type is at odds with humility, but we all need leaders and organizers. That is also a service. And many of us are energized by that. There are many of us who feel that if we can't take some responsibility and organize others and be a project manager or some kind of leader, that we're not getting real satisfaction from our work. And then there are other people who really don't want this. There are people who just want to work on their own, or they want to work as part of a team. They want someone else to take the responsibility, and they really don't want to have leadership positions. So I'd like you just to take a moment and think about when you had this as part of your work, or when you didn't have it as part of your work. How do you feel when you have it? And how do you feel when you don't have it? The next one we're looking at is Gyan. So Gyan means knowledge. And there are some kinds of work that, practically speaking, require you to keep gaining knowledge. Like I remember here, actually, in Mumbai, speaking to one eye doctor who told me that in order to do her job well, she had to keep up with at least 3 articles in her field in medical journals a week. So there are people who really love that. They want to have a job, they want to have a career that basically forces them to keep learning, that they have to keep studying in it, they have to keep learning more about it. And other people really don't like this. There are people who they want to learn what they need for their work, and that's it. They're like, why do I have to keep learning? I have to keep taking this, why do I keep studying this? So again, I'd like you to think about, when did you have this as part of your work or not have it? How do you feel when you have it? How do you feel when you don't have it? Okay, the next is Virya. So Virya is strength and health. So a lot of people have jobs that require physicality. Okay, my daughter teaches Bharatanatyam, she runs a school, and she gets vigorous physical workouts as part of her work. Or I have a friend who told me she likes taking care of cows because it means she gets a lot of exercise as part of her work. I was speaking to one devotee who's in the construction business, and he says that one of the things he enjoys most about his work is how much of a physical exercise he gets. Now, Virya may not be necessarily physical exercise. It may be other aspects of health. Now, we're looking at what your work is giving to you. For example, there are many doctors who help other people become healthy, but in their work, they have long, irregular hours. They don't eat properly. And so their work isn't helping them become healthier. Do you follow what I'm saying? So we're looking right now not at what prosperity we give to others through our work, but what prosperity the work is giving us. So some people really want to have jobs that where the job itself increases their health, their vigor, and other people really don't. They're happy to have very sedentary work that has nothing to do with their health, and they work on their health separately from their work. So once again, I'd like you to think about when you had work that involved Virya or didn't, and how did you feel when you had it, and how did you feel when you didn't have it. The next kind of prosperity is Shri. Shri means anything that's splendid. So here we're looking at leadership that is charismatic or inspirational. You might not be organizing anybody, you don't actually like take responsibility for other people and getting their talents and all that, but maybe you just inspire people. Or Shri can refer to just work that infuses your life with some sort of beauty, where your work involves visual beauty or auditory beauty or beauty in nature. And again, there are some people for whom this is really important, that the work they're doing brings some sort of beauty into their life. And again, I want to emphasize, right now we're looking at what our work does for us. Just like somebody who collects rubbish from the street, they're making life beautiful for others, but their work isn't making them more beautiful. You follow? Yeah? In fact, they get dirty. They're getting dirty and stinky from their work, although they're contributing to others' beauty. So I'd like you to think of, when did you have this as part of your work or not have it? How do you feel when you have it? How do you feel when you don't have it? The next is yasha. So yasha means meritorious fame. So in the Bhagavatam, yasha is a person who is the child of kirti and dharma. So kirti means people are talking about you. It's related to the word kirtan. And dharma means what's authentic and what's righteous. So yasha means people are talking about you because you've done something righteous. They're not just talking about you. And yasha implies that there's a community. There's people that are appreciating each other. So for many people, this is essential for them to feel that they have a prosperous life. There are many people who want to work as part of a team. I know some people during lockdown who really suffered because this was so important to them. You know, I have one friend who said, I'm so glad that I can go into work now and work physically with my team, that I don't have to just do everything remotely. You know, so to be part of some group that is giving encouragement and admiration to each other. Then there are other people who really don't like this at all. Again, there are people who want to just do their work by themselves, you know, or they might find social... Are you here in the class? If so, could you sit so you can see the screen? Yeah. So there are people who find like social, emotional events to be just irritating and boring. So there's some people who really want this in their work, as part of their work, and others who don't. So I'd like you to think of when you had yasha or you didn't in your work, and how do you feel when you have it? How do you feel when you don't have it? The last type of prosperity is vairagya, which is perhaps the strangest type of prosperity. It almost seems like an anti-prosperity. And it is that of detachment, equanimity, and freedom. So in careers, this prosperity type shows up as, say, having a very flexible schedule, or being able to travel a lot as part of your work, or being able to live a very simple lifestyle as part of your work, or being able to be detached from people's emotional interactions and relationships as part of your work. There are some people for whom this is just essential to have in order to feel fulfilled and rich, and other people, again, don't like this at all. Some people are much more interested in security, and they much more want to be involved, and so forth. So I'd like you to think of when you've had this or not had it in your work, how you felt when you had it, and how you felt when you didn't have it. So at the back of our book, we give examples of different careers that people have. And we have a self-examination where you can evaluate which prosperity types are involved in these careers. And then we have the answers with an explanation. We can go through a few right now. So there's a friend of mine who used to work as a traveling musician. So he and his wife would travel from one venue to another, and they would sing songs that they wrote. And the lyrics were very philosophical, but the nature of the music was such that it was hard to understand the lyrics. And they did like dance routines and light routines along with the music. And he would have to carry the equipment in and out of the vehicle. What prosperity types was he getting from his work? Yes? Virya, yeah, some Virya, yeah. What else? Shri, definitely. What else? Yes? Not really. I mean, the fans were nice, but he wasn't part of a community of musicians, so not much yash at all, very, very little. Vairagya, yes. So he was getting Vairagya, Shri, and also a little bit of Virya, and a little bit of Aishvarya. Who was he in charge of? By the way, when I ask these questions, getting the wrong answers will teach you as much as getting the right answers. Okay? Was he in charge of anybody? No. Do you follow? You understand? It's just himself and his wife, I mean. So no Aishvarya. So a little bit of what else? A little bit of Gyan, because he was writing philosophical lyrics for his songs. So he hasn't worked at that job for years. Now he has a new job where he travels in America from one national park to another, and he gives hiking tours, trail guide tours. So he studies about each park, what are the plant life, what is the animal life, what is the history of the park, and he takes people on tours, sometimes just for an hour or two, sometimes for a day, sometimes multi-days with camping. So what prosperity types is he getting from this work? Gyan. Someone said Aishvarya. Who is he managing? Nobody. Okay? Virya. Vairagya. Shri. So you notice he's pretty much getting the same prosperity types. You follow? The two jobs look very different. But from both jobs, he's getting Vairagya. There's a lot of Vairagya. There's a lot of Shri, but it's a different kind of Shri. One is the Shri of nature, one is the Shri of the music. Virya, he definitely has a lot more Virya as a hiking guide than he did as a musician. And he also has a lot more Gyan as a tour guide, a hiking tour guide, than a musician, but he was getting Gyan in both of his jobs. And we're about to go to the 4 fields. Both of these jobs were in the same field, according to the 4 fields. So the prosperity type gives you some specificity about career, and it also allows you to move from one career to another and still have the types of prosperity that enriches you. Now, some people think that, well, if I just make enough money, I can buy my prosperity type. What happens when you exchange currencies? You always what? You always what? Lose. Right? Also, if people have this idea, then that means the 8 hours they're at their job, they're not feeling fulfilled. All they're getting is the money, and then they're hoping maybe when I get home I can use some of that money to give me the prosperity type I want. And if they're commuting back and forth to work, how much time do they have? How much time and energy? Not much, do they? You follow? So while certainly money is important, these are more important. And they're more important to be getting directly from your work. Not trying to get just on the weekends or on the evening and thinking, well, I'm going to use my money to buy this. Or if you're getting the wrong prosperity type at work, You know, again, you can't really exchange it for the right one. You know, if you hate being a manager, I was just talking to a devotee in Pune like that. I'm managing this project and I hate being a manager. Then you're not going to have a rich life no matter how much cash you can look at in your hand. Right? So again, at GV, we will spend a whole session just on this. We'll go a lot deeper into the topic. Okay, now we're going to look at another way of finding what is our nature, and that is the four fields. So I'm sure you're all familiar with this verse from the Bhagavad Gita. Now, with the prosperity types, my co-author and I, Dr. Ruchira Datta, we decided to use the Sanskrit for the prosperity types, but for the fields, we decided not to use the Sanskrit. And I would like to ask a favor of all of you. I know that you're going to be very tempted to translate these English words into the Sanskrit words with which you're familiar. I would like to ask you not to do that. The reason we didn't use the Sanskrit for these terms is that pretty much all of us have a lot of misconceptions connected with those words. We have a lot of what they call baggage. And we'll immediately project that. And if we have a little bit new vocabulary, now once you really learned about this, you can go back to the Sanskrit. But for right now, please put them aside and resist that inner translation attempt. Okay. And we're going to, at the GEV, we're going to spend 1 2-hour session defining what these fields are, and then we're going to have another 2-hour session defining what is the nature or the inclination of people in these fields. How can I figure out which field I belong in? So again, we don't have time to do all that tonight. I'm going to go through it briefly. The first field is the field, I should go back here for a moment and just say that unlike the prosperity types, each of us only has one field. So generally we have 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 prosperity types that we really need to feel fulfilled, and others that either we don't like or they're kind of just nice extras. But with the fields, we only have one. Now, I always get somebody arguing with me about this and telling me that they're in 2 fields, but that is just not possible. And the reason for that is understanding why Krishna has divided all the hundreds of thousands of jobs into these 4 categories. The reason is that each have a different set of values. And the values or dharma of each field is contradicted by the values or dharma of the other fields. They're mutually exclusive. There's some overlap. Each of the fields has some aspects that overlap the other fields, but they also, and that's why people get confused, but they also have intrinsic values that are unique to their fields and contradicted by the other fields. And therefore, if you were in 2 fields, you'd be at a war with yourself. Now, there are people who work in more than one field and are not happy, and they don't know why. They can't figure out why. I should mention, and we'll go into this in a lot more depth at GEV, but I should mention that you can't tell what field you're in by what you're good at. You can be very good at something that's opposed to your values. Have you ever been very good at something that you hated doing? Yeah, it's entirely possible. Also, you might not know what you're good at in your proper field if you haven't been trained in it. You might not have any idea that you're good at something if you haven't been trained at it, and you might not recognize what are your natural values. We'll discuss that more a little later. Okay, so first we're going to look at the field of artistry. The field of artistry provides all of the functionality in society. Without the work of this field, nothing would work, nothing would function. They also provide all of the beauty in society, and they also provide all of the pleasures of society. Without the work of this field, society would be very dry. So the main questions people ask about their work in this field are, is it beautiful and is it supportive? The basic mentality of the people in this field is service. They get their pleasure from serving others, from pleasing a client, from pleasing a customer. This aspect of this field really became very clear to me one time in St. Petersburg when I was staying in a home that had about 15 original oil paintings on the walls. And I had already seen many prints of these paintings and many electronic files of these paintings, but seeing the originals was an incredible experience. Just the quality, the texture was something that couldn't be captured in a print or an electronic file. Can someone wake him up, please? Good morning. And so I was thinking about the artist. And I was thinking, would I do that? You know, would I create such incredible works of art to hang in someone else's house? And I thought, I wouldn't do that. I just wouldn't do it. Like, I'll give any of you a copy of this PowerPoint if you want, but I get to keep it when I do that. You follow? Yeah? I mean, it's for this reason that the Lord himself directly protects, the Bhagavatam says that the Lord himself directly protects and supervises this field. And the mentality of this field is the closest to bhakti. This concept that my happiness comes from serving and my happiness comes from giving pleasure to others. And again, the questions people ask are, is it beautiful? Is it supportive? I'd like to just ask, and again, getting this wrong is as much a learning experience as getting this right. I'm not looking for right answers. I'm looking for exploration so you'll learn. Can someone give me some ideas of what careers might be in this field? Yes. Okay, so actors, dancers, all performing artists, most. Some performing artists not, but most. Yes, yes. No. Thank you for being willing to give a wrong answer. Excellent, excellent. Yes. Most musicians. Not all, but most, the majority. Do you mean an artist or a house painter? Most artists and all house painters. Yes. All engineers. Yes. Yes. Not usually. Yes. Blacksmiths. Yes. Aren't too many of those around, but yes. Healthcare. Nurses. Yes. Doctors only if they're surgeons or dentists. Other doctors, no. Nurses, yes. Yes. Architects, yes. Excellent. What? Athletes, yes. All athletes, yes. Yes? Huh? Fashion designer, yes. Yes. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Entertainment industry, most. The vast majority, yes. Some exceptions. Yes.
Are also lying this, doctors are also lying. So I'm not getting the context of this.
Okay, so engineers are trying to please a customer or a client, and they are providing for functionality, support, and beauty. Okay. Now, some doctors act as if they're engineers. Like, let's say you go to a doctor and you say, this is my disease, this is the medicine I want, write me a script. And they do that and you walk out of the office. Then they're acting in this field. But that's not what they're supposed to do. So surgeons and dentists are in this field because they're like plumbers and electricians. You follow? Yes?
Mataji, because why the context of my question is this, doctor means you have to serve. It's a service industry.
Everybody serves. But a doctor isn't supposed to try to please the customer or the client.
Okay, but engineer has to create something which is, which can, sense, which can see, is a not in a service industry. But doctors is a profession of service. Engineers.
Everybody serves. Everybody serves. That's our Sanatan Dharma. But a doctor is not supposed to be pleasing the patient. The doctor is not supposed to tell you what's pleasing to you. The doctor is supposed to tell you what you need to hear, whether you like it or not. That's completely different from an engineer. An engineer engineers and creates what you want. I'm going to hire an engineer to create what I want. Now, the engineer may work with me to understand my desires and manifest it, whether that's software, whether that's a bridge, whatever it may be. That's not what's happening with the doctor. At least that's not supposed to be what's happening with the doctor. The doctor is supposed to educate and guide you and treat you to what is best for you that you might not even know yourself. They're acting in a very different kind of a position. But everybody serves.
So Mataji, in case I'm an artist,
Yeah.
I'm an artist and I create painting which pleases me. So does this come under this category?
Well, are you going to be able to make a livelihood like that?
Eventually somebody might buy it.
Well, that doesn't sound very lucrative. I think what you're asking is, can people do work in artistry as a hobby and not as a livelihood? And the answer is yes. And in fact, a lot of people's hobbies look like artistry, but they're doing it to relax just for their own pleasure or maybe for their families. They're not trying to make a livelihood out of it. You may paint pictures for your own enjoyment and for your own family. Maybe you give a few away to friends. You're not trying to make a living out of it at all. Okay? Discuss this more when we go more in depth at GEV. I can't take too much more time with it now, sorry. Okay, next is the field of ideas. So this field provides the wisdom, guidance, truth, and education to society. Oh, we should also mention one more thing about artistry. Artistry is a field of satisfaction. The people in this field are satisfied. They're not ambitious people. They're satisfied if they have basic comforts in life, if they have a loving partner, good food to eat, and if they're treated with dignity and they're given a fair price for the goods or service that they provide. Going on to the field of ideas. The field of ideas is also a satisfied field. These people also tend not to be ambitious about their work. Their satisfaction is different. Their satisfaction is from the mental and intellectual stimulation that they get from their work. So they may be involved in finding truth within, or they may be involved also in sharing that truth with others. Now, often they share truth through language, sometimes through mathematics, especially statistics, but also sometimes through the arts. And this is why there are some musicians, painters, actors, dancers who are not in artistry, but in ideas. So if a musician is singing, "My baby loves me, but she left and I'm crying," that's in artistry, right? But if someone's singing songs about philosophy and truth and the aesthetics are secondary, then that's in ideas. So people in ideas may use aesthetics to communicate truth, but the truth is what's prominent and the aesthetics are secondary. So the main questions these people ask about their work are, is it true and is it wise? Is it true and is it wise? Now, very much in contrast to artistry, these people will give truth and wisdom that people might not necessarily like, but that's good for them. So they kind of have the antithesis of trying to please customers and clients. Although, like I said, everybody's serving. They're still serving society, but in that regard, it's an opposite mentality. Okay? Some ideas of what careers are in this field. Teachers, generally, now if you're teaching people how to bake a cake, you're in artistry. Okay? But if you're teaching that with more of a systems and truth, then in ideas, yeah? Advisories and consultants, often, not always. Scientists, yes. Huh? Authors. Okay, authors are in the same category as musicians and painters. So if you're writing novels about romance or detective, crime, mysteries, what field are you in? Artistry. Or you're writing the biography of a movie star, that's artistry. But if you're writing about philosophy and truth and systems and analysis, that's ideas. Or journalism. So, the war correspondence, that's ideas. The gossip columnist, that's artistry. You got it? Okay. What other careers are in this field? Well, being a spiritualist shouldn't be a career. But priests are in this category if they are a full-time priest as their livelihood. Okay, yes? No. Thank you for being willing to guess wrong. Politicians, no. Somebody else. Yes? Motivational speakers, not always. Not always, depending on what they're motivating you to do, and not always. I couldn't understand. Advertisement. No. No. Yes, astrologers, yes. Yes. Research, yes. Yes. What? Doctors, this is where the doctors are supposed to go, yes. Not the dentist and the surgeons. Yes. Now let's take, say, a physical therapist. If the physical therapist is just giving you exercises, they're in artistry. If they're actually training you and guiding you about your health and your life, then they're in ideas. Make some sense? Yes? Okay, and yes? Okay, I think what you're saying is that there's intelligence everywhere, and you're correct. Now, the vast majority of society's intellectuals are in the field of ideas, but not everybody in the field of ideas is an intellectual, okay? Just like if it's raining, there has to be clouds, but if there's clouds, it may not be raining. So if you're an intellectual, you're in the field of ideas, 99% sure. But if you're in the field of ideas, you may not be an intellectual. You get it? Everybody got that? And there's intelligent people in all four fields. Are there highly intelligent athletes? Definitely. Are there highly intelligent software engineers? Definitely. You follow? There are highly intelligent people in all four fields. But these people are the intelligence of society. They're providing the intelligence for society. Right, going on to the field of resources. So the field of resources is an expansive field. The Bhagavatam says that the people in this field are always thirsty. That doesn't mean for water. This is the only field that provides the resources of society. They provide the raw materials for food, construction, clothing, medicines. Without this field, nobody eats. And they are able to look at systems in the world of their resources, take them and expand them and share them with others. What they do is they take whatever area of resources they're involved in, channel that flow to themselves, increase it, and distribute it. Now, the main questions they ask about their work, which is very poorly understood by those in other fields, are: is it sustainable and is it regenerative? Is it sustainable and is it regenerative? And in order to have sustainable and regenerative flow of resources, you must have profit. Does that make sense? Yes? If you're planting a field, you have to save some seeds for the next harvest. There has to be a profit. This is part of the Dharma of having sustainable, regenerative wealth for society. And those are the main questions they ask about their work. Now, there are certainly employers in the other fields. There are people in artistry who employ others, people in ideas who employ others, and as we're about to go into government, people in government who employ others. But the people in the field of resources are the primary employers in society. Everybody's supposed to give in charity, but these people are the main givers of the quantity of charity in society, and they're the main tax givers. They're the biggest tax givers in quantity, the biggest charity givers in quantity, and the biggest employers in quantity. Okay? So some examples of careers in this field. Farming, if you own the farm, not if you work on it. If you work on it, you're in artistry. Yes. Textile industry, if you're owning the business, managing the business, not if you're a worker, in which case you're in artistry. Yes. Banking, yes. HR, yes. Real estate, no. I don't think so. Huh? Entrepreneurs, yes. Stock analysts, yes. Yeah. Oil and gas, yes. Again, not the workers, not the people digging for the gas, but the people who own the businesses and manage the businesses. What did I request at the beginning of this? I made a request. I'd really like you to honor my request. Don't translate this into Sanskrit. You're going to be very tempted. Please don't do it. You can do it later. After you've really studied this in depth, then I'm happy if you want to go back and put the Sanskrit terms on it. But if you put the Sanskrit terms on it, you're going to be bringing into this discussion the ideas you already have, and I will guarantee you some of them are wrong. Business and business women too, yes. Business people, yes. Investors, yes. Huh? Mining, yes. Diamond mining industry, yes. Traders, yes. Very good. There's a consultant in business, someone here said consultants, yeah? Let's say you're a business consultant and you simply help people how to increase their business, then you're still in this field. Now, if you're teaching business ethics, if you're a professor of business, then you're in ideas. Clear? And that's why people might think they're in two fields. Well, I'm a professor teaching business ethics and business understanding. That person's in ideas, but they're particularly helping resources. But if you just go in as a consultant, okay, look, this is how you could increase where you're getting your materials from, and this is how you could understand the market better, and this is how you could have more efficiency in your line. That's just a very intelligent person in resources. Is that clear? PR, yeah, and advertising, marketing, yeah.
So this encompasses all the businessmen, entrepreneurs,
Yes.
maybe the consultants who charge, enough money.
Well, doesn't matter how much money you charge, but it's people who are consulting particularly for business success without looking at a whole picture of reality, yes. For example, our youngest son is in this field, and at this point, he's had a number of jobs, but at this point, he's a consultant who helps businesses customize SAP software in order to work with the specific needs of their company. Now, he's been a finance manager in a company, he's been a CEO of a prasadam business, he understands, he's been a leader and a manager in a textile company, so he understands all the various aspects of business, how to see what the market is doing, how to source the proper vendors, how to get your stuff distributed properly, how to, all that kind of thing. So he can go in and help businesses with that. So that kind of a consultant, yes. Yes? Nope. What field are they in? Artistry. Very good. They're using the natural resources, yes. They're using what people in the field of resources have made available to them. Politicians, no. So the people in the field of resources, they're the ones who've harvested the wood that the carpenter then uses. They're the ones who've harvested the clay that the potter then uses. And are carpenters and potters, are they trying to give expansive wealth to society? Or are they trying to provide functionality and beauty to society? Functionality and beauty. And you'll find, potters and carpenters, they don't have an expansive mentality. They're concerned with the beauty and quality of their product, not with providing society with wealth. Do you see the difference in mentality? Okay. Again, we'll get into this much more deeply at GEV. I don't have much more time to do that here. Okay, the last field we're looking at is the field of government. So whenever you have human society that's anything more than very simple, it needs some way of organization. It needs some way of protection from internal and external threats, some kind of legal system. It needs some way of providing what people find it hard to provide for themselves, like roads and schools and hospitals and different facilities. Now, the field of government isn't just political governments that work on taxes and fines and fees, but it also includes, ironically, what we call non-government organizations that collect charity but do the work of government. So there are NGOs that do things like, providing roads and schools and medical care and clean water, and they're doing government work. And Srila Prabhupada talks about how also in this field are landlords. So they have an apartment complex, which is like their little kingdom. And they're, instead of collecting taxes or charities, they're collecting rent, and they're providing the kind of things, again, do people have water? Do they have electricity? Are things in proper repair? So this is, like resources, an expansive field. These people want to protect and care for as many people as possible. Now, this is not just about protection, it's also about care. They're kind of like the big parents of society. Now, both the field of government and the field of artistry care for people, but the field of artistry cares for people like a servant, like Dasi above, and the field of government cares for people like a parent, like Vatsalya above. The main questions people have about their work in this field is it just, like justice, and is it honorable? Their main concerns are justice, honor, ethics, fairness, law, and so forth. So what careers are in this field? Lawyers, excellent. Judges. Bureaucrats, no. Bureaucrats are people in artistry who may be assisting in government. Diplomats, excellent. Yes. We've really looked, Dr. Ruchira Datta and I, her name is also Rukmini, we really looked at HR. Now, there are some HR people whose main concern is whether or not the employees are getting what they're due under the law. In that case, it would be government. But in most cases, HR is part of just hiring and firing, and then it's part of resources. Yes. Yes, police officers. Any military, yes. Huh? Yes, can you be specific? Okay, well, the mayors of a town, I don't know if you have the same names here in India we have in America, like the mayor of a small town, a governor of a state, president, prime minister, people, anyone in the legislatures or the parliaments, the lawmakers. Yes.
Ma'am, I had a question. When you speak about protection and care for people, then can spiritual leaders come in this category of?
Not this kind of care. This is providing, I mean, you could be a very spiritual person in any field. But this kind of care is making sure you have food, making sure you have water, making sure you have electricity, making sure your house isn't overrun by rats, making sure no criminals are going to rob you, making sure that you're given all your rights under the law, that when you go out, the streets are paved, there's electricity outside, there's a school for your kids to go to, you know, an enemy country isn't bombing you.
Yes, because protection and care is one aspect of...
Well, but they're protecting and caring for you in that way.
Yeah.
And part of their protection and care is to make sure that you have access to spirituality and you have access to religion, that people have the right to practice religion. Yes, that's one aspect of care. But the religious leaders, if that's their livelihood, they're in ideas. Yes? Security, yes, excellent. People running public transportation, not the bus drivers. Okay? So taxi drivers, rickshaw drivers, bus drivers, airline pilots, they're all in artistry. Okay? The epitome of this field, the person who personifies this field, is the firefighter. If you really want to think of what does the field of government look like, the firefighter is a really good picture. They're willing to sacrifice themselves to save others, and they'll go into danger. Okay, so Krishna says that we should do our own work. We shouldn't, that we shouldn't go into someone else's field. And this is one of the points that he makes twice in the Bhagavad Gita. There's only 2 verses that Krishna repeats in the Bhagavad Gita. This is one of them. He says, don't go down someone else's path. What happens when we go down someone else's path is we are pretending to be something we are not. Prabhu, I think you can turn the fan off. Can you turn the fan off? We're pretending to be something that we are not. And Krishna says that when we are doing someone else's work, our work becomes bhayavaha. It becomes a vehicle of fear. Like if you were trying to drive a bicycle in the sky or a car in the water. Now, I want you to look at this for a minute. This isn't the greatest projector, so it's not really that clear. But when we're doing our own work, we're going to feel enlivened because our own work is an expression of ourselves. We're almost going to feel like we're playing and not working. And whatever money we get for our work is just an added bonus. When we're doing someone else's work, we're going to feel depleted, exhausted, we're going to procrastinate, We're going to be frustrated. When we're doing our own work, our mind is naturally our friend. And we'll discuss this a lot more at the GV classes. When we're doing someone else's work, our mind becomes our enemy. It becomes very difficult to control our mind. When we're doing our own work, we have a natural sense of detachment. Again, being paid is just an extra. We're getting so much of a sense of prosperity and richness and satisfaction for our work that the fact that we need to get money for our work is just something on the side. We would do it anyway if we didn't need the money. And it's very easy then to dedicate all of the results to Krishna. If I'm doing someone else's work, the work itself isn't satisfying me, and therefore I become very attached to the results of the work. And being able to dedicate the results to Krishna becomes very difficult. Okay, the next part of identifying our prosperity type and career field is principle 2, advancing through life while nourishing our nature. Again, we will have a whole 2-hour session on this in GEV. This is how to tell in which of these fields I am in and how to nourish myself in that field. So there's a difference between an expert and a novice. The Shastra basically describes those who have dharmic expertise in these fields. But when we're trying to figure out what field we should be in, we really want to look at this. We really want to look at what's our inclination. Now, one way we can do this is by keeping in mind that Krishna says our nature cannot be repressed. Therefore, the nature of our inclination towards one of these 4 fields is going to manifest no matter what we do. The research shows that by age 13, a person's inclination for a particular field can be discerned. My own experience is that often that happens at a much younger age. Now, I want to emphasize that in any career, there are 3 types of expertise. One is to be expert in the information you need to do the work. Another is to be expert in the skills or the craft of the work. And the third is to be expert in the values or the Dharma of the work. We can all become expert in information and skills in areas that are not compatible with our Dharma. We can all become expert in information and skills that are not compatible with our Dharma, which is why Krishna says, don't do someone else's work even if you can do it expertly, even if you can do it perfectly. By perfectly, he means the information and the skills. We will not be able to do the work of another field expertly in terms of Dharma. And what cannot be repressed is our Dharma, our values. Whether we're concerned with beauty and support as the main thing, or sustainable regenerative wealth as the main thing, or justice, ethics, morals, honorable as the main thing, or truth and wisdom as the main thing. Now, this tendency shows up in childhood. So one example we cite in our book is a man who used to get in trouble in school for doing this. And they stop that. And he was always getting sent to the principal's office and getting in trouble. And when he was 10, his teacher said to him, "Can you stay after class?" "Oh boy, again. I'm in trouble, right?" He said, "No, you're not in trouble." And what did the teacher give him? Drums. Became a world-famous drummer. Another true story is of a girl who in school was always getting in trouble for jumping out of her seat, running around. She just couldn't sit still. And so the teachers and the school counselor had a meeting with the parents. You know, we think your daughter has a problem. Maybe she should be on medication. And one of the teachers said, "Let's try something." And he put her in a room and turned on some music and watched. They watched. She started dancing. And they said, "She doesn't have a problem. She's a dancer." And not only did she become a world-famous dancer, she became a choreographer of a lot of famous Broadway musicals. So I know one devotee child who was always getting in trouble. Why are you minding other people's business? Stop minding everyone else's business. Do your own work. Do your own work. And he was always going around making sure everybody was following all the rules. Hey, they're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to do. Why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? Then when he was 18, he went on Indradyumna Swami's Polish tour, became the second in charge of security there. They said he was one of the best leaders that they ever had. Huh? What do you all think I got in trouble for when I was 3, when I started to go to preschool? I don't mind. I'm asking the question, so I don't mind at all. Yes. Okay, some more specificity. Voicing my opinion about what? To whom? Teaching, yes, but I wasn't teaching the children. I was trying to teach the teachers. So the teachers complained to my parents, your child's a real problem in school. She doesn't just, I was 3, right? She doesn't just play with the other kids. She's always coming up to us and saying, you see that child over there? She really needs help with this, and you should try, and could you help that person, right? And so I was always criticized for this the whole time I was growing up, especially from my mother and my teachers. Stop teaching. It wasn't until I was 24 when I met my god sister Jyotirmayi, and she trained me in the Dharma of teaching and then the craft of teaching. And after a couple weeks, I'm like, oh my God, I'm a teacher. And one of the main things I've done in my life is teach teachers how to teach. Yeah. Now, by the way, if you had asked me when I was, say, 12, what are you good at, would I have said teaching? I thought it was a problem I had to get rid of. Okay? So our values are going to manifest. Our Dharma is going to manifest. It's something that we can't be rewarded out of, we can't be punished out of, we can't be convinced out of it. It's going to manifest. If someone doesn't recognize it as something valuable and train us in the Dharma and the craft and the information of it, it may manifest in a way that is troublesome. If we're blessed that our family has the same values that we have, or we have teachers who recognize it, then we may be able to be guided at a young age. And that's what's supposed to happen. What's supposed to happen is that when we're young, that our parents, our teachers, our elders, they notice what is our natural Dharma and values, and they train us in the information, the craft, and the Dharma of our natural inclination. Then in the prime of life, we actually work in our career. At middle age, then we retire from career and we can guide others. And in old age, we have nothing to do with career and we prepare for death. I'm just going to mention briefly that there's some people who skip that second stage. It's really not a good projector. Some people skip that second stage and go right from being a student to being retired. All right, we're going to look now at the next level, finding satisfaction and purpose in our work. Because just doing what we're meant to do and being who we're meant to be isn't enough to give us full satisfaction. So here we have 2 principles. Principle 3 is extending our prosperity to others. So Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, that everyone should engage in yajna, dana, and tapasa. Everyone should give in charity. There's nothing in the Shastra about some single unmarried person having a career and keeping all the prosperity for themselves. Bhaktivinoda said, because I wanted to earn money, therefore I got a wife. We think of it in reverse, because I have a wife, therefore I have to earn money. But the idea is that if one wants to have a career and contribute to the world, one should at least be sharing with one's spouse, or children, or parents, or the Bhagavatam says, the creatures around your house. We should be sharing. In fact, looking at just money, Srila Prabhupada often makes the point that how much money we earn, how much money we have, depends entirely on how charitable we were in previous lives and in this life. And have you noticed some people earn a lot of money, but they don't have a lot of money? You know, people like that. They always get into debt, or somehow they've got some big expenditures someplace. So how, you know, if you look at a job and say, well, that has a really high salary, that doesn't mean you'll have a lot of money. We have a lot of money depending on how much charity that we've given. Yeah? Now, charity, of course, doesn't have to be given just in money. We can also give in charity according to what kinds of prosperity we're enjoying in our work. Now, what's lovely about this is that if you don't have a lot of money to give in charity, there's still a lot you can give. Now, this is very brief. We have a whole chapter on this in our book. And so we have many, many examples of how one can give that with the prosperity that one is enjoying, that one can also give. One can also volunteer one's time to give that prosperity to others. Just like, for example, with Gyan. So Srila Prabhupada told my god sister Yamuna, who was an expert cook, he said, if you don't share your knowledge of cooking with others, you will become envious. So what does that mean? Right? It means, well, you can be a good cook, but not as good as me. Right? So by sharing, we get rid of envy. And we get in the mood that the Lord wants us to have of being kind and compassionate to others. And without doing that, we're not going to be fully satisfied. Have you noticed that it's often more satisfying to give gifts to others than to spend money on yourself? Isn't that weird? Could you imagine, you know, in all the Christian countries, Christmas is like the big spending month. But what are people spending on? Themselves? Imagine, suppose the store says, look, you might not like the gifts you get. That's not a very efficient way to spend your money. Why don't you take all the money that you were going to spend on Christmas gifts and spend it on yourself? Would that work? It's interesting, isn't it? Logically, you'd think that would work. But we get much more fulfillment, right? It's about finding satisfaction and purpose in our work. We get much more fulfillment when we give and we share than when we keep everything for ourselves. Okay, but that's not enough. I could be in my right place and I could be sharing my prosperity, but in order for my work to give me satisfaction and have a purpose, and the empirical evidence is that if we're not doing work for a higher purpose, we're not happy. We're not motivated and we're not happy. So then we have to come to principle 4, ethical and meaningful work of value. So the first part of this is that our work should be honest. Honest means that we are charging a fair price for whatever goods or services we're giving. We're representing our goods and services honestly. If we're paying people, we're compensating them fairly. If we're paying suppliers, we're paying them a fair price. That makes it honest work. All right? But that's not enough. We need to be doing work that provides genuine value for society. So there's a lot of work today that provides what we would call manufactured or artificial needs. There's some good or services being produced that nobody needs at all. It's simply a disturbance. Right? Or even worse, work that actively causes harm. We can think of like, tobacco industry, alcohol industry, meat, slaughterhouse industry, pornography industry. They're actually harming people. Now, ideally, no one should be harmed. No one and nothing should be harmed in the course of our work, and everyone should be dealt with honestly, and we should be providing real value. To do that absolutely is probably not possible. Krishna says every work is covered by some kind of fault. And in 2023, to have our work absolutely do no harm to anybody ever is probably not possible. Right? We may be using a phone and the metals and the battery came from some forced child slave labor in Africa. So there may be some sort of incidental harm involved in our work. But generally our work should be honest, providing real value, and not providing harm. If we do that, our work will be far more satisfying. We'll get much more meaning. Does that make sense why our work would give us more meaning in that way? Now, for a lot of people, that's going to be enough. But if that's all you do, you're still within the realm of karma, where even though I'm giving people things of value, I can only give people things that they have earned by their own karma. So if I do honest work of value for others, I get good karma, but I can't give you any value that you haven't earned through your karma, just like I can't harm you in ways that you haven't earned through your karma. And because you've earned it means you've gone through some kind of tapasya. So that means there's kind of always this balance. Nobody really gets just dynamic benefit without some corresponding payment or austerity. And within this ordinary material value is what Rukmini, Dr. Ruchiradatta, and I call the cycle of frustration, where we do ordinary dharma, we get wealth, we spend it on pleasures, and then we get frustrated. We're like, this just isn't giving me ultimate satisfaction. But we don't know any better, so we go right back into the cycle. But if we go above that to what's called the fifth goal of life, prema pumartha mahan, if we're doing our work out of love, love for ourselves, love for the work, love for the people that we serve, and ultimately love for Krishna, then we're able to give people value through our work that is beyond karma. And when we do that, we give people value that is dynamic and increasing and doesn't need any kind of payment. It's called causeless mercy. And when we do that, we and others get the ultimate satisfaction from our work. Now, this next thing I'm about to show you is, I would say, is the most wow part of this whole understanding. It is this part of career dharma where Rukmini and I really saw how intelligent Krishna is, and why is it that there are these four fields of work. And we will have a whole 2-hour session on this in GEV. And this is, we talked about how when you work in the wrong field, you harm yourself. Does anybody remember the 3 ways in which you harm yourself? I'm testing myself as a teacher, not you. Yes? Sort of. I had that picture up there with the 2 side-by-side pictures. Anybody remember those 3? Any of them? Yeah, one is, if you do someone else's work, you'll be procrastinating, you'll be frustrated, you feel depleted. When you're doing your own work, you feel energized. Excellent. And what was one of the other ones? Well, work is all about values. It's because you're doing work that's opposed to your values that this happens. But what are the other 2 things? I know it's hard. It's a weekday night. I know it's hard. Yeah? Yes. When you do your own work, you're detached. When you do someone else's work, you're attached. And the other one? That was the first one. Yeah. There's one more. Yeah? That was the last one. Detachment and attachment. Yeah? Well, it's your mind. Is your mind your friend or your enemy? Yeah. When you're doing your own work, then your mind is just flowing with your work. It's your friend. When you're doing other people's work, your mind is your enemy. But we might say, well, that just has to do with me. Maybe I can suffer, my spiritual life can suffer, but at least I'm doing something valuable for society. No. When we do someone else's work in someone else's field, we stop doing ethical work of value because we're actually harming society. So we're in our book and in the We look at every possible wrong combination of crossing of fields, and we go into it in great depth. And again, at GV in the fourth class, we'll be discussing this in much further depth. So I'm really just touching it tonight, but I hope this will give you some idea of why working in the wrong field causes harm to society. Let's look at government and resources. What's similar about these fields? Corruption can occur in any field. What's the nature of these fields that's similar? Yeah, but what's similar about the values of the Dharma of these fields? Everybody contributes. All fields contribute. These are both expansive fields. Remember? These are both fields of expansion. Yeah? Okay? But in government, you're looking at the flows of people. You're trying to serve the needs of people directly. And resources, you're really serving people indirectly. You're looking at just the flow of one resource. Okay? So if those of the mentality of government work in resources. Do any of you remember in the Soviet Union when the government took over businesses and agriculture? What happened? What happened when the government took over the farms? What happened in society? Well, people starved. People starved. Without the profit motive and without the sustainable, regenerative wealth mentality, the food was rotting in the fields and people starved. Because government, they're distributing to everybody according to their need, right? No? All right. When people with the mentality of resources work in government, they're going to try to use government to make a profit. Which will, of course, cause... Is government supposed to make a profit? No. It'll cause corruption in government. Again, there's many other examples of these two crossings. I'm just giving one for each. Crossing government and ideas. Any idea what's similar about these two fields? And these are both systems thinkers. They're both looking at the big picture. Okay, but government is going to look at systems in a very practical way. How can I help people have roads? People and ideas may be looking at a very theoretical way. Right? When people with the mentality of ideas go into government, they're too merciful. They'll forgive criminals. They want to take too much time researching. They won't make fast enough decisions when people need fast decisions. When people with the mentality of government go into ideas, what are they going to do to knowledge?
Like IITs, they have the incubation centers where they make arrangement for the startups. So ideas, the government is promoting that startups.
Okay, there is a difference between cooperation between the fields and working in the wrong fields. The fields are meant to cooperate with each other. But that's different than somebody with the mentality of ideas doing government work, or somebody with the mentality of government doing ideas work. But they are meant to cooperate with each other. And in one organization, you might have people working in different fields doing different types of jobs. So let's say in a business, the people running the business are in resources. The secretaries and the workers are in artistry. You might have a business lawyer that's in government. And you might have a data analyst who's deciding what data to analyze. They have the full freedom to decide what data to analyze. They decide how to analyze it, although that's not much of a decision. There's usually certain statistical tests that are used for certain statistical things. And they give their own interpretation and they guide the business in that way. They're in ideas. Now, if the business manager tells them what data to research and they just research it and analyze it, if they just collect the raw data and analyze it according to the direction of business, they're in artistry. But if they're choosing what data to take and they're analyzing it and interpreting it, they're in ideas. So therefore, you could have all four fields working in one place. But they're working in their own field and they're working cooperatively. Whereas here we're talking about somebody with the mentality and the value of ideas doing government type work, or somebody with the mentality of government doing ideas type work. So someone with the mentality of government doing ideas type work, they're going to politicize knowledge. People with a government mentality writing a history book, right? And that's going to damage people's trust in the field of ideas. Also, people in government are much more comfortable with the hierarchical structure. Ideas needs a lot of freedom. They will impose a hierarchy on the field of ideas, which will stop the free flow of knowledge. Crossing ideas and, yes, I don't have a lot of time for questions, but yes?
Train for this particular job and so what, how we can take it that? Because we're trying to say develop or train that person for them.
If you're training people in their field of work, you're in ideas. Unless you're just training them in the craft of the work. So if I'm training you how to make cakes, I'm in artistry, although I'm a trainer. But if I'm actually training you and preparing you for your career in general, holistic way, I'm in ideas. And I could be training people for various careers. Okay? Is that clear? And by the way, I'm very glad you asked that. Okay, so crossing ideas and resources. Any thoughts about what is similar about these two fields? They're both kind of a little detached, right? Government and artistry is dealing directly with people. But there's a very different system of ethics in these two fields. So somebody with the mentality of resources working in ideas, they may bend truth to make a profit. Think about pharmaceutical companies that do research. And again, this damages people's trust in the field of ideas. Also, people who have the mentality of resources, they're going to feel that it's unethical for people to spend time and money researching things that don't make money. So they're going to neglect, because a lot of the work of the field of ideas is seen as just sort of useless and impractical by the rest of society. The rest of society, they're like, why are you researching that? Right? So if somebody with the mentality of resources works in ideas, they may neglect a lot of the actual work. Somebody with the mentality of ideas working in resources, remember, ideas is a satisfied field, resources is an expansive field. So in ideas, you might be happy having your own garden, but you don't really want to have an agribusiness. And if somebody with the mentality of ideas runs a business, they just don't have the energy for it. They'll probably just give everything away. They really just don't care. And then the business fails and people starve. Okay, government and artistry. So what do these fields have in common? They're directly dealing with people, yes. And the difference is excellent, excellent. Artistry is a satisfied field, government is expansive. Also, artistry, you're serving people as a servant, and government, you're serving people as a parent. It's a different mentality. When people with the mentality of government work in artistry, their idea of, they're not really so interested in the craft of the thing. Also, another difference is that people who work in the field of government, remember I talked about the firefighter? They're high risk-taking people. They're energized by crisis. You know, do you really want a high risk-taking person wiring your electric wires? Right? They have a different mentality about the craft. And a lot of times government-minded people who work in artistry, their urge for justice becomes very frustrated. They may become vigilantes or agitators in some way. When people with the mentality of artistry work into government, well, people in artistry are providing the structure and function of society. They're the people who maintain the status quo. They're not the kind of people who want to run into a fire. We had in the United States sometime last year or so, there was a shooting in a school, and some of the police officers didn't go in because they said, well, people were shooting in there. So the problem with people with the mentality of artistry work in government. They don't have the mood of running into the fire. You follow? They're also very prone to be corrupted because they're satisfied with basic creature comforts and with pleasing people. Yeah? So if they're offered the perks of government, they may not do their job properly. Crossing ideas and artistry. What's similar about these fields? Yeah? Is more what? I'm not sure if ideas is more authority, but I'm asking what's similar about these. They're both fields of satisfaction. They're not expansive fields. Okay? But what's very different is how they find satisfaction. Right? And also, it's interesting that in Shastra, these are both fields of honesty. Prabhupada writes in a purport in the 18th chapter how for the field of resources and government, diplomacy is required. Right? That's another problem. When ideas people work in government, they're going to start wars because they're going to be straightforward with... They're not going to be good diplomats. And Prabhupada says the field of resources, lying is compulsory. Like you don't go into a business and they say, oh, this is our profit margin. Right? But both artistry and ideas are fields of honesty. But it's a different kind of honesty. So you want your plumber to be very honest. Okay, I have these 3 different qualities of pipes, and this is what they cost, and this is what it will do. Right? You don't want a dishonest plumber. It's going to be a catastrophe. And people in ideas are honest in the sense that they're going to give you straightforward truth, even if it makes you uncomfortable. Right? So it's quite a different thing. So when people with the mentality of ideas work in artistry, well, ideas people are often too detached. Artistry is providing all the beauty in society and all the pleasures of society. And ideas people are just like, why? It's all Maya. And they can dry up the field. I have a friend who should work in ideas. He has the mentality of ideas, but he's an electrician. And I keep telling him, you're in the wrong field. And he told me, he said, you know, Urmila, you're right. He said, I open up the electrical boxes and the other electricians, they make sure all the wires are beautiful. And I said, it's so stupid. I said, get out of that work. When people with the mentality of artistry work in ideas, they may sensualize knowledge. They may sensualize science, religion, philosophy. Think about the people in the field of artistry, it's like they're providing all the salt and spices in the food. Yeah? But in ideas, you're supposed to be the visionaries of society. So when people with the mentality of artistry work in ideas, it's like society has salt and spices in its eyes. Okay, crossing resources in artistry. What's similar about these fields? They both deal with very practical things in life, right? Right? But one is what? What's the difference? One is expensive, one is satisfied. All right, when people who have the mentality of artistry work in resources, they're not going to have this sustainable, regenerative, expansive mentality, and so they may do businesses that are polluting to the environment. You know, they're pulling resources from the environment, but they're polluting it because they're not really thinking about how are we going to have this be sustainable. When people with the mentality of resources work in artistry, they're going to think about expansive profits. They're going to take the crafts and automate them, turn them into factories. They'll destroy the craft of the crafts. And then people who are actually doing the traditional crafts won't be able to compete. They'll create fast food restaurants, fashions that go out of fashion every 2 months, sports that are fueled by drugs, entertainment, instead of having inspiring plot and character development, is just going to have a lot of sex and violence. Okay, I hope you've all seen that working in the wrong field also becomes harmful work. Yes? That doing meaningful and ethical work of value also includes working in the right field. And again, we'll have a whole 2-hour session just on this. We have 2 chapters in the book on this topic alone. And once you kind of get this, you see, first of all, Krishna's genius in having these 4 fields. And second of all, you see that a lot of the problems in society are people are in the wrong field. All right, is that enough? Well, we're going to go on to progress toward dharmic mastery. And in here we have 3 principles. The first is delight in cherishing our prosperity and field of work. So here you're in the right field, you're giving in charity, you're doing honest work of value, but you also have to cherish your prosperity and field, because all of our prosperity comes from nature. Comes from the earth, who's the wife of God, comes from Lakshmi Devi. If we don't cherish our prosperity, we're like the person who cuts off the head of the goose who laid the golden egg, or cuts off the branch of the tree that's giving you the fruits. Now, the first source of our prosperity is our own body and mind. We should make sure that in the work we do, that we are keeping our body and mind healthy. So many people do work that actually damages their own body and mind, isn't it? And then we want to make sure that we take care of the bodies and minds of the people that we work with. We don't want to damage their bodies or damage their minds. Mm-hmm. And then we want to make sure that our work honors the environment. Now, there's also ways of cherishing our specific prosperity types. What type of prosperity we're enjoying, to make sure that we're cherishing and respecting that. Like, let's say you enjoy vairagya in your work. Now, this is just a short summary of the book. We have much more depth. If you're enjoying vairagya in your work, you want to make sure that you're not so detached that you stop caring about other people. Right? If you're enjoying yasha in your work, you don't want to tell people that they should respect you even when you've made a mistake. If you're enjoying aishvarya in your work, you want to make other people feel smart and competent. Right? If you're enjoying gyan in your work, you want to make sure you also have some EQ. You want to respect other people's knowledge. If you're enjoying virya in your work, you want to make sure you're doing that in a healthy way that's respecting nature and your body, and that you're using your strength for the good of others. If you're enjoying Shri in your work, you don't want to use beauty as an unfair advantage. Then one should also cherish one's field. And as you learn this, you'll see that this is another huge problem in our society. If you've got someone, they're in the right field, they're giving in charity, they're doing honest work of value, but they're not cherishing their field, they're corrupting their field. In artistry, you cherish your field by keeping the high quality in your craft, treating your customers and clients with respect, and keeping the prices honest. Right? Again, this is a short summary. There's far more in depth to cherishing one's field. In resources, you treat the plants and animals kindly. Principle 6 is having celebrations of the sacred in our life and work. So this is the principle of yajna. Prabhupada says we have to pay our electric bill to the sun. You know, in nature, plants and animals naturally give back, but we have to deliberately give back to the Lord. And this means taking time out from our work to engage in yajna, to the point that everything we do in our work becomes a giving back to the Lord. So whatever one's religion or faith, at least once a week, preferably every day, to spend some time with the Supreme Lord, to the point that we dedicate everything. Our last principle on individual career dharma is to work above the shades of ego. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with Mr. Tamas, Mr. Sattva, and Mr. Rajas. And we call them shades of ego because Tamas is like a dark curtain over your window, Rajas like a sheer curtain, Sattva like a clear window, and being above the shades is like being outside. So should I really introduce you to these guys? Would you like to meet them? So we can know who our enemy is? Okay, so let's first meet Thomas. So I'm Thomas, and I just want to do things that are easy, you know? I mean, I'll do the right thing if it's easy. Like if there's a vegetarian burger and it's at McDonald's for the same price, I'll buy it. You know, I have to go to another place and spend more money, forget it. Like if the remote's over there, I'm just going to watch whatever's next on the television, you know? I'm not ambitious or some woo spiritual person, you know? I'm a practical person. Take care of my family and don't insult them. I get insulted easily and I can insult you back. Then we have Mr. Rajas. I'm a very honorable person. I work hard. I am honest. I'm religious. I follow the laws. See everything I've earned it with my hard work and my sacrifice. And I will tell you how many hours and how much hard work and how much money I have spent to earn all of these things. I am a builder of society. I'm not lazy or some woo person. I have built the schools, the hospitals, the parks, and probably my name will be in the history books. Maybe a statue of me will be put in the park. And then there's Mr. Sattva. I am a very spiritual person. I'm very balanced, I'm equipoised, I'm forgiving, because it makes me feel so good inside. I'm not lazy or ambitious. I have a shelf full of crystals and angels. I see everybody equally, unlike those materialistic persons. So we want to rise above the shades, and we want to see that I'm part and parcel of the Lord, that He is directing my life, and life is a wonderful, playful adventure where I can act as His representative. So these shades represent the dark side of our work. They're like the occupational hazards of our work, that we may be tempted to pull energy from them in order to do our work. So we can look at a couple of examples. So charity in Tamas, I give alcohol to an alcoholic. Okay? Or I give a good thing to a good person, but without respect. Here, Swami, take your charity. Or while they're sleeping, hey, wake up, I have a donation for you. Right? Or Rajas, I give the right thing to the right person with respect, but it's calculated. Well, if I give this, I'll get something back. or my boss will be pleased with me, or why did I give that? And in sattva, I give to the right person, for the right reason, at the right time, with respect, because it makes me feel so happy inside. Above the shades, I give to the right person, at the right time, for the right thing, with respect, to make who happy? Doing work in the shades, in tamas, disengaged, lazy, procrastinating, morose, deceitful. In rajas, excited when things go well, depressed when things go bad, aggressive, envious. In sattva, detached, always determined. And above the shades, this is from Bhagavad Gita 3:30, 3 do's and 3 do nots. 3 do nots. Don't try to enjoy my prosperity types as an enjoyer. Cherish them, respect them, or we could say enjoy them as prasadam, not bhoga. Don't think that I'm the owner. I'm not the owner of my talents, my skills, my work, my prosperity. Don't be lethargic. 3 things to do. Dedicate everything to Krishna. Remember, I'm not this body. I'm not actually associated with any of these fields of work or anything that I'm doing or anything in this world. I am a pure soul and do work according to my nature. So now we're going to briefly look at the 2 principles for society, for the system. As we said, Prabhupada used this term peace and prosperity 195 times. The first one is maintaining societal balance, cooperation between the fields, and competition within the fields. We've already spoken a little bit about cooperation, right? How the fields can cooperate, right? Ideas guides and trains others. Government provides licensing, accreditation, venues, facility, resources, organizes, direct, and distributes the flow of money and materials. And artistry assists all of the other fields. Now, it would be lovely if everybody cherished their field, then there'd be no corruption. But because that doesn't always happen, the fields also act as a check and balance. Like ideas holds government to the rule of law. That's the function of a free press. Government regulates the other fields through law, resources by where and how they spend their money. Artistry, they vote with their feet because they're in large numbers, but also artistry regulates the other fields by deciding what they're going to translate into art, music, and theater. We've had some interesting court cases in America where the artisans won and said, we don't care what the law is. If that's not what we believe, we're not going to put that on our cakes. We're not going to put that on our website. Within the fields, there should be competition. Prabhupada says competition gives life. There should be no competition between the fields, only within the fields. And competition encourages us to do our best, energizes us to reach the limits of our abilities, focuses our mind. Now, this should be sportsman-like competition. When you have a lot of jewelry stores or fashion stores in one place that benefits both the customers and the business, not predatory competition and not trying to erase people. So competition in artistry brings us so many inventions and masterpieces. Competition in resources brings us better quality products and better means of distribution. Competition in politics, think of the role of having more than one political party, or the role of having different kinds of governments in the world that compete as to who can best serve people. Competition in ideas invigorates philosophy, religion, and science to respond to time, place, and circumstance, and to keep the purity. And our last principle is all-inclusive, sustainable prosperity. Modern economists made a deliberate, conscious attempt to separate economic theories from natural resources. They said we're going to separate concepts of economic prosperity from the land. We're going to define economic prosperity as growth. What is the problem of equating economic prosperity with infinite growth? What's the problem with that? Yes? Well, that will be a result, but what is the logical problem with saying economic prosperity must mean infinite growth? Yes, resources are limited. You cannot have infinite growth on a finite planet. So when you equate economic prosperity with growth, you will have forcing. You'll be forcing the land with chemicals. You'll be forcing the animals with antibiotics and hormones. You'll be forcing trade, using up fossil fuel so that people can eat strawberries in January. By the way, Hiranyakashipu did that. And you'll be forcing people to work beyond their capacity. You'll also create a wealth disparity because you'll be pushing for economic growth, and so some people and some countries will have an inappropriate amount of the world's resources. But actually, this principle, and this is something Prabhupada really emphasized, is that proper career Dharma means everybody has a decent amount of sustainable prosperity. Yes, some people will be richer than others, but there should be all-inclusive, sustainable prosperity. So we've looked at identifying our ideal career field and prosperity type, learning the secrets of making our work deeply meaningful, progressing toward dharmic mastery, and the whole system for peace and prosperity with these 9 principles. So I don't think we have time for questions here at the end. We're already a few minutes over time. If you want to go more deeply into this, so we have our book downstairs. We did a special Indian printing. It is also available on Amazon, but much more costly. And we will be giving much more in-depth classes where we will have 5 sessions of 2 hours each, so that we will have much more time for going into these things in more detail and much more scope for questions and discussions. So I hope that you all found this inspiring. Yes? One thing that I've really been deeply appreciating with this work that Rukmini and I did is we started with Shastra. You know, I have researched and taught things where I started with some empirical understanding and brought some Shastra into it. But this, we started with Shastra. This is Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, although our book also has over 400 empirical references. And it's something, of course, as you all know, that Srila Prabhupada very much wanted. Yes? Yes? And there's been so much confusion as to how to, am I correct? If we're going to say, what is it that Prabhupada wanted, wrote about, talked about, but nobody knows what to do and what it is and how to go forward, it's this, isn't it? So I'm hoping that we've really pleased Srila Prabhupada, and I'm hoping that we've been very faithful to the Shastra. Any mistakes that I have made, anything wrong, they are my responsibility. They're not my co-authors. they're just mine. Anything good is from Prabhupada and from Shastra. So again, and I don't have time now for discussion. I'm sorry. So thank you very much. Srila
Hare
Prabhupada
Krishna.
ki jai.